Okay, so this is about the midpoint formula. So I just want to start off with an example on test scores. So if you had two tests, and you got an 82 and a 96, and you wanted to find the average, that average would actually give you the score that's exactly in the middle if all you had were two, right? So you would know that you would take 82 and 96, and you would add them up. So I get 178. And then in order to find the one in the middle, I'm going to divide by 2, right? So divide by 2, and I get 89. And that logically makes sense because if we look at our two numbers, isn't 89 going to be the score that's in the middle between 82 and 96? So that would be our average, right? So we added them up and divided by 2. So if we have 2 points, let's go with the points that we've been using. So if we have these 2 points, there is going to be a point that is exactly in the middle. And that point is going to be the average of your two x values divided by 2 and the average of your two y values. So our midpoint formula, there is a formula, and that is, remember we called this x1, y1, and x2, y2, and it doesn't matter. I could have called these x2, y2, and these x1, x1, y1, it doesn't matter. So I'm just going to, for my x value, I'm going to take -2 and I'm going to add +2 to it and divide by 2. So I'm going to get 0 divided by 2, which is just 0. So the x value of my midpoint is 0. I'm going to do the same for the y. So I'm going to take my y1 and add to it my y2 and divide by 2. So I get 1 divided by 2, which is just, and I'm gonna represent it as a decimal because it's actually easier to graph decimals on our graph paper. Okay, so this is going to be 0.5. You could leave it as a half. That's totally fine. So let's think about that. So if we take, if we just look at our x values, isn't the point in the middle between -2 and 2, 0? And isn't the point between 4 and -3 a half? That one's a little harder to visualize. But let's go ahead and graph it back on our original graph. So we said that our midpoint was going to be 0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that. And I have 0, and that's about 0.5. And if you look at it, isn't that point? So isn't this 0, 0.5 or 0, a half? Careful, this x, x originally represented the length of that, the distance. But that midpoint is 0.5. So our midpoint formula, all we're going to do is we're going to take our two x's, x1, let me rewrite that again, x1 plus x2, and divide by 2. And that's going to give us our x value. And our y midpoint is going to be taking the two y values, y1 plus y2, and divide by 2. So think of them as two basically separate formulas. Don't try to connect them. But the x value is adding your two x's, dividing by 2, and your y value is adding your two y's and dividing by 2, just like you've always been doing finding the average.